Hello, we continue with our topic, causes and the results of the First World War. Causes and the results of the First World War. Remember, in this topic, we are looking at a number of issues. We started in part 1, in part 2, in part 3, because it's a very long topic. Now, to this far, we are still looking at the major highlights, the highlights of the war, that is the First World War. Now, at this time, we'll pick it up from the entry of Europe, the entry of Italy. Now, in this part, we are going to look at a number of issues. The entry of Italy into the side of the Allies is just another highlight that we are going to look. Then we'll also be looking at other battles like the Battle of Jutland, the entry of USA, the withdrawal of Russia from the war. And we are also going to look at the impact or the results of why Germany and her friends were defeated. So it's also another wonderful part because it is now we are coming to the end of this topic, causes and the results of the First World War. So be there, let's be together as we continue in this topic. I am your usual teacher, the fat lizard of the desert. So let us look at the entry of Italy. So Italy signed the Triple Alliance in 1882. Remember that one, where she committed to support Germany and Austria-Hungary. The Triple Alliance of 1882. You have to remember that one. She promised to be together with Austria-Hungary as well as Germany for defense. When the war broke out in 1914, Italy remained neutral since she considered that her allies were aggressive. So in 1914, Italy did not just venture into the war straight up because she thought that Austria-Hungary and Germany were aggressive. They were the ones who asserted others. Therefore, she was neutral. In May, however, 1915, Italy signed a secret treaty in London. So that one, which was called the London Treaty with the Allied powers. So then at the London Treaty, she was promised territories such as Trentino, South Tyrol, Istria, and Dalmatian Islands after the war. So she was promised secretly to say, right, if you become part of us, we are going to give you Trentino, South Tyrol, Istria, and Dalmatians. All these islands, all these areas or territories were the territories that were partly that were to the part of Austria-Hungary. Remember, we mentioned that Italy and Austria-Hungary, they were traditional enemies. So when she was invited at the Treaty of London, she was told to say, right, you have been arguing with Austria-Hungary for quite long. So when you join us, we are going to give you all those parts that you have been quarreling with the Austria-Hungary. Then Italy entered the war on the side of the Allies. So remember, well, in 1882, she was on the part of the Triple Alliance, but when the war broke out, she was on the part of the Allied forces, that is Britain, France, and Russia. Having looked at that highlight, the highlight on how Italy entered the war, now let us look at another highlight. This one is the Battle of Jutland. The Battle of Jutland. So the navy fighting did not take place heavily, although both sides had a number of battleships. The major navy fighting took place at Jutland in May 1916. So no side claimed victory during this fight, that is the Battle for Jutland. But German ships were confined to the ports throughout the war period. So it was like a show at the sea, well, this one is coming, then the other one, they are coming closer, they are chasing like that. So it was not like a real fighting. But what we are seeing here is that the Germany's ships were confined to the port. They could not move because it was like the sea was dominated by the ships for Britain and for France. So in that way, then the German ships were just confined to the port. So no real fighting took place, although the ships were there. So this allowed the Allies to effectively apply their method, that is the blockade. So they were blocking the ships that were going towards Germany like that. So it happened that at the Battle of Jutland, it happened that not much fighting, but it was like chasing each other and confining the German ships to the port. Now, another highlight of the First World War is the withdrawal of Russia in 1917. Let us see what happened. So the Tsar of Russia was overthrown during the 1917 revolutions. By this time, there was a Tsar Nicholas II, Tsar Nicholas. Remember, we mentioned of Tsar Alexander II, the one who was in that Three Emperors League, if you can recall. So Lenin and the Bolsheviks party, they took over. They overthrew Tsar Nicholas II and they took over. Lenin was the one who took over from the Bolsheviks party, from the Tsar. So they established their party, that is the Bolsheviks party. They signed the Brest-Litovsk Treaty on 3rd March 1918. The Brest-Litovsk Treaty with Germany. So Russia lost territories to Germany, including Ukraine. So we are saying that for Russia to withdraw the war, it signed a treaty with Germany to say we are withdrawing. In other words, we have surrendered. We are no longer continuing with the war. So that is after the revolution, after the Tsar was removed from the throne. Then Lenin, who took over the leadership, he promised the people to say we are no longer going to fight in the World War. So they signed that, the Brest-Litovsk treaty. So in that treaty, they lost territories. Russia lost territories to Germany, including what is now called Ukraine. She lost important coal and iron regions as well. She had to pay compensation to Germany of about 3 million rubles. So that was a lot of money by then. And also Lenin considered it necessary to give time for Russia to recover, because Russia had suffered a great casualty during the war and there was great poverty there. So with poverty, then again fighting in the war, then the new leader, Lenin, he saw it necessary. Let us lose everything in order to make Russia recover. So he also hoped that the revolutions would spread to Europe and then would regain her territories. So Lenin hoped that, all right, let's give away those territories, but we have started the revolution here in Russia. So what is going to happen is that we're going to expand this revolution to other parts of Europe. Then when we do that, we're going to regain all the lost territories. So it was like a plan for Lenin. Then Russia pulled out of the war after the Brest-Litovsk Treaty and all its terms. The Germans, they moved their troops to the Western Front. So you see to it that the Germans now, they were fighting the two fronts war. After the withdrawal of Russia, it was like now they have gained some strength. Now their focus was to the western side, where they were facing Britain and France. They hoped that the Allies would surrender so soon. So Germany hoped that now that Russia has pulled out, these two, France and Germany, are going now to, France and Britain are going to pull out. So that was the hope for Germany. And also Germany launched their offensive fight, very offensive fight. So, however, as Russian troops were pulling out of the war, the Americans arrived in large numbers. So there was a twist to the hopes of Germany to say maybe very soon France and Britain are going to surrender, but it did not go in that way, because as Russia was pulling out of the war, then that period America was joining the First World War. So it was nothing for the Germans as well. Now, we have just mentioned the entry of USA into the war. The Americans were entering as the Russians were pulling out. So let's look at the entry, another big highlight of the First World War. What happened there? So the USA did not want to join the war since she was supplying weapons, food, and money to the Allies on loan. So USA during the First World War was making a lot of money because they were supplying all the necessities to the Allies, Britain, France, and Russia. So they were supporting them to the necessary things on loan. So America's economy was flourishing. We are going to look at that when we look at the economy. The next topic, we are going to look at those things. But why? Why did USA join the war? Why did USA join the war? Number one, Germany submarines. They sank the Lithuania, a British passenger ship, on 7th May 1917. So in that ship, there were about 128 American citizens. So you know, Americans, even up to now, when someone or when any country messes up with an American citizen, America doesn't allow that one. They don't allow any country to mess with an American citizen. So that's why you hear America there. Whenever an American citizen is in trouble, America usually goes straight to that country and solves its problem itself. So America does not maybe need or request other countries to say, can you give us that person who has done that one? The Americans, they do it themselves. That's their policy. That's their policy for the Americans. So they joined the war because Germany, we talked about the submarines, if you can remember. Whereby the Germans, they were using the submarines, and those submarines, they were sinking or destroying the ships for the Allies. So one of the ship that they sank was called Lithuania. It was a British ship. So that in that ship, they were also American citizens. Therefore, because of killing the American citizens, then Germany had a question to answer to America. So that's why America entered the war. Also, the Zimmermann telegram. The second reason why America joined this war, the First World War, was this one, the Zimmermann telegram. So this was a secret telegram to Germany ambassador in Mexico. So it revealed that Germany offered to support Mexico to recover Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico from USA. It was intercepted by the British and sent to Washington. So it happened that the Germans, they were secretly provoking USA. How? They were supporting Mexico to regain some territories from Mexico. What were those territories? We are talking of Texas, Arizona, as well as New Mexico. So with that then, that telegram that was sent to Mexico was intercepted. It was caught by the British, and the British, they sent that telegram to USA to say, USA, don't think that while we are fighting the First World War with Germany, and Germany, we should not think that Germany is your friend. Look at this telegram. So with that then, America joined the First World War. So the USA declared war on Germany for those two reasons. The sinking of Lithuania, killing of 128 Americans, as well as the Zimmerman telegram. That was another highlight. That is the USA entry into the World War. Now let us look at women in the workforce. Remember, women are also important. Now, women in the workforce. So before the war, some jobs were classified as men's jobs, others as women's jobs. So the warfare industry required increased labor. The warfare industry, the manufacture of guns and many artilleries, it needed more people to work. So with that then, there was need for women. So women and unskilled young people joined the workforce in large numbers in order to support the warfare industry, the manufacture of warfare, guns, ammunition, and the like. So women, they worked as messengers, ticket sellers, and heavy industries such as building and steelwork. So women also entered into the work industry in those works that were regarded as men's jobs now, because there was high demand for the manufacturing of many things, especially warfare materials. Then they joined the work. They joined the industries. So at the battlefields, the women, they worked as nurses and ambulance drivers. So, you know, in the battlefield, then women, they were working as nurses as well as the ambulance drivers, assisting those wounded soldiers and the like that were there. While men, it was just compulsory. Remember conscription and mobilization. Conscription, compulsory recruitment of soldiers, all male, go to the battlefronts. So it meant that there was also a need for others to work as the nurses, as well as doctors, as well as the drivers for the wounded people. Therefore, women joined the battlefronts as well. So, for instance, 60% of workers in weapon industries in Britain, they were women. So those people who were working in manufacturing the weapons, they were women, because more men were in the battlefronts. So there was need for women to take over other jobs. So in France, about 1/4 of war industrial workforce were women. So 1/4, you can see that, industrial workforce, all women in France. Now, having looked at all those highlights, it's high time now we look at the armistice. The armistice, the ceasefire, what happened for the war to come to an end. The entry of USA into the war brought vast resources in to the side of the Allies. So the Allies got a plus, got an advantage when USA joined their side against Germany. So they lent them money, food, weapons to be paid back after the war. So USA brought its own things to fight Germany, and also brought others to lend to others like France and Britain, so that they borrow those things and they are going to pay back after the war. So it meant that the Allies now, they had an upper hand. Therefore, the Central Powers resistance rapidly collapsed. So from that time now, when USA came with a big muscle, then we see to it that Germany and her friends, their resistance started to decline, started to collapse. And from there on, one by one, they started to surrender. So Bulgaria surrendered on 29th September 1918. Then Turkey surrendered on 30th October 1918. Then Austria-Hungary surrendered on 3rd November 1918. Then lastly, the owner, Germany, asked for the armistice, that is the ceasefire, on 9th November 1918, and surrendered on 11th November 1918 at 11 a.m. So there then, we see to it that the war came to an end in 1918. Soon after the entry of USA, then things changed. Everything changed in how the war was, because it supported much of the Allies, and things changed. And one by one started to surrender in 1918. And finally, on 11th November 1918, 11 a.m., then the war came to an end and Germany surrendered. So we see to it that even today, 11th November is a holiday, when that the end, commemorating the end of that great atrocity that the world has ever seen. That is the First World War. Many people died, so it came to an end. Now, why did Germany and her friends surrender? Why did they surrender? What are the factors that made them to be defeated? So first, it was because of the collapse of the Schlieffen Plan. Remember the Schlieffen Plan? The Schlieffen Plan by Germany. So due to the collapse of that one, it did not work well. Failure of this plan frustrated Germany's hopes of an early victory. Remember, the plan was that within 6 weeks they are done with France. Then they quickly defeat Russia, but it did not work. Germany fought the Two-France War, which was not planned. So the Two-France War, which was already voided, which was a major threat from the beginning by Germany, that one was fought again from the beginning up to the time Germany, or up to the time Russia withdrew, that is 1917. And also another factor was multiple France war. Collapse of the Schlieffen Plan. Number 2 is multiple France war. So Germany was fighting the multiple France war. So troops were dispersed to fight the multiple fronts, such as Russian front and the Italian front in 1915. So Germany's troops, they were divided. Others go to face France, to face Russia, others to face Italy. So there then, it was not okay for Germany. This increased the pressure on the Central Powers. Germany and France, they were fighting under pressure. And another factor that led to the defeat of the Central Powers was the entry of USA. The entry of USA. As already pointed out, we have said that USA strengthened the Allied forces with a vast amount of resources. You know, USA is rich, so she brought all that wealth to France, supporting France, and Britain was also rich already. Then the fighting capacity with the it was high. Again, Germany unrestricted submarine campaign. That one also, it led to the defeat. How? The convoy system enabled the Allies to survive this campaign. The Japanese, American, and British destroyers always accompanied ships to the Allies, and they controlled their ports. So the convoy system enabled the Allies to survive this campaign. So they were using the convoy system. When their ships were moving, they were moving like in a convoy, a lot of the ships at the same time. As a result, the Germany submarine campaign did not manage to destroy all the ships. And Allied unity of command also contributed to the failure or to the defeat of Germany and her friends. So the Allied forces were put under the command of under one command for effective coordination of war strategies. So all the Allied forces, they were being commanded by one central point. So they were receiving their commands from one central point to say, right, now Italy, enter this side. Now France, enter this side. Britain, this side. America, this side. So in that way, there was one central point of command. With that way, they were well coordinated. So in 1918, they were led by General Ferdinand Foch from France. So he was the general who was commanding all the Allied forces. And also another factor for the defeat was the weaknesses of Germany's allies. So as we have seen from the beginning that Germany's allies were not all that strong. Germany had to send some of her troops to assist Austria-Hungary and Turkey. And this reduced Germany's impact on the Allied forces. So you can see to it that the only strong country was Germany. Because when Austria-Hungary and Turkey were facing the other side, then the Germans also had to send some soldiers to beef up the support on Austria-Hungary and Turkey. Another factor for the defeat was technical advances. The invention of the tank, the Kassinger, in 1916 had devastating psychological effects on Germany's troops and lowered their morale. As we said the Kassinger, the tank, it was moving, or it moves where there is no way, in the mud, in the forest, in the rocks. It just moves on and on. So the Germans, they were putting the barbed wires, the fences in some of the places. So those Kassingers, they were just moving forward where there is a fence or what, they were just moving forward. So that one, it caused a devastating psychological effect on the German troops when they saw to it that here we have made a shield here. No one can pass through here. Then those tanks were just moving through. They were just moving through, passing through to their side. So it decreased their morale. And Allied access to colonial manpower and resources. Remember, the Allies, they had the colonies elsewhere, Asia as well as Africa. So the Allied powers had access to colonial population and raw materials which contributed to their victory. So people, also soldiers were taken from Africa, from Asia to fight in the Battle of France. That's why at one point in time, we had some people who fought in those battles, like the First and Second World Wars, who were taken from here and they went to the Battle of France to fight on the line of the Allies. Now, let us look at the impact of the First World War. The impact. First, it led to the destruction of life, infrastructure, and industries. About 20 million people were killed. So that is a big result or impact. Here we are looking at the result or the impact. 20 million people were killed. So when you talk of 20 million people, it's a lot of people. In Malawi now, we are about 18 million. So we are not yet there to the total number of people who died on the First World War. All Malawians in total, we are not yet there to the total number of people who died in that single war. From 1914 to 1918, they died 20 million people. An outbreak of influenza pandemic, which also claimed about 20 million lives, hence reducing the population of the world between 1918 and 1919. So there was also the outbreak of influenza. So that pandemic, it also joined that war. So while the war killed 20, influenza killed 20, together 40. So you can see how many people died during that period of the war. And effects of blockades produced revolutions in Germany and Russia. So the effects of blockades produced revolutions in Germany and Russia. So the blockades, remember the blockades? We said that the British, they were blocking all the supplies that were going to Germany that time. So with that one, it meant that all the imported goods were not arriving there. Imagine here in Malawi, all the borders are closed. We cannot move out, or things cannot come in. What will happen? Within a month, we are going to have to stage that revolution that has never been seen, because we are going to point out people to say, it's the president, no, it's this minister, maybe it's this chief, maybe it's this manager, like that. So we will just be pointing to one another to say, you are the failure, you are the failure. Why? Because the necessities, some of the things that we need to, in order to keep our life going, we depend from outside, from others. So if we close those things, then we are going to stage some revolutions as well. I remember history has it to say some time back, around 2012 or so, there was this scarce of oil, yeah, petrol, nowhere to be seen. Then one effect led to the other. Then sugar, nowhere to be seen. Then then things went beyond. Then people started pointing out to the leaders, it's you who is doing this, it's you who is doing this, like that. So that's the revolution we are talking about here. Effects of the blockades produced revolutions in Germany as well as in Russia. Rising national debt in Germany, in Britain and France. They borrowed money to finance the war, which they promised to pay after the war. We have talked about this to say America lent the money to Britain and France, which they were supposed to pay. They were to pay after the war. With that, then, we see to it that it was another big impact. It led to the national debts, whereby after the war, the country was in deep debt. They were supposed to pay. If we talk of our countries, like most of the countries in Africa, Malawi inclusive, today we have the debts that were taken maybe by the first government of Malawi, maybe the first government led by Dr. Banda, the second government led by Dr. Muruzi, the third government led by Dr. Bingo or Professor Bingo, and all the governments, they have been borrowing, and each and every time we pay those things. Bit by bit, we pay. So that is what is called national debts, Economic problems arising from the peace settlement led to the rise of dictatorship regime in Germany and Italy. So when the war came to an end, now settlement of that war or peace settlement, it led to the rise of dictatorship in Germany and Italy. We are also going to look at that, especially in Germany. We're going to look at the rise of dictatorship in Germany, where we're going to look at the rise of Adolf Hitler. We're going to look at that. And Benito Mussolini in Italy. And also, another result of the First World War was it led to the fall of the Tsar in Russia and the establishment of the first communist state in the world. Remember, we have just talked about it to say in 1917, Russia withdrew. And there was another government which was set there by the revolution, led by Lenin. We're going to look at that, the communist. So it was the first communist government in the world, the communist Russia. So we're going also to look at the communist revolutions in Russia. So we're saying that the first World War led to the fall of the Tsar in Russia, which led to the establishment of the first communist state in the world. So we're going to look at the effects of that one as well. And also there's need to preserve, or with the need to preserve international peace, it led to the formation of the League of Nations. So when countries saw to it that, yes, international peace is necessary, look at how many people have suffered, how many infrastructures have been destroyed. There is need for the countries to come together to form an organization. So there was the formation of the League of Nations. So there is also another part that we are going to look at, the League of Nations. Now, let us look at the attitude about gender. it was changed. That is another result, mind you. Attitude about gender, it also changed after the war. How? Women joined professions such as law and architecture, which were previously for men only. And also access to family planning methods and education increased with the leading campaigners such as Mary Stopes 1888 to 1958, which has led to the formation of what we call Banjalam Sogoro today. So we see to it that the attitude about gender now changed after the war. Whereby women joined the other professions, and there was also access to other family planning methods and the education, family education. And also women gained right to vote in most of the European countries. So after the work that women did during the war, then people recognized that even women can support us in other things. Then women started to vote in other European countries. Having reached this far, we have come to the end of this topic. The first topic, that is the causes and the results of the First World War. We picked it up from the first part. Remember the first part? We're looking at the events in Europe leading to the war. So those events, we looked at them. Then part 2, we centered much on the causes. Then part 3 on the highlights, and part 4, this part, we have looked at, concluded the highlights, as well as starting to look at the conclusion now, the results of the war, the impact of the war, and why, the factors that led to the defeat of the Central Powers. So having reached this far, we have come to the end of this topic. We have come to the end of this topic. So next time, we're going to start another wonderful part that is very, very wonderful. So next time, we're going to look at developments in the interwar period. So interwar period is the period between 1919 and 1939. The interwar period is the period between 1919 and 1939. So we're going to expound more on the developments that happened there. Why is this period regarded as the interwar period? It is because, remember, the First World War ended in 1918. Now from 1919, there was no war. And the First World War broke out in 1939. So the period between the end of the First World War and the beginning of the Second World War, that period is called the interwar period. What happened? What was the situation like in the world after the war, in between the war, between 1919 and 1939, after the end of the war, First World War, and before the breakout of the Second World War? What was the situation like in the world? So it's a wonderful topic, because all those things that we just mentioned about, things like the economies of USA, to say their economy was good, we're going to look at that one. In Asia, we're also going to look at the economic conditions in Asia. We're going to look at the communist revolutions in Russia, the communist government. How did it go? We're also going to look at the dictatorship in Europe, the rise of dictatorship in Europe. Adolf Hitler comes in within these developments that happened in the interwar period. Remember, we also talked of the League of Nations. The League of Nations was also formed in within this period. So there were a lot of things that happened. Definitely, there were those things that also led to the outbreak of the Second World War. So this topic you cannot miss, because it is a great one. It is fragmented into many, many other parts that are also much interesting. So till next time, I hope to see you next time, because these things we are talking about, they are already there. They're just waiting for you to say, I need this part, then we send it to you, then you learn at your home comfort. Till next time, thank you so much.
Simutaya nthawi yanu kufunafuna maphunziro, muzakhala wotumidwa moyo wanu wonse. Ngati simuphunzira, anthu azingokutumani. Ajala kalime, ajala kuchwe manyazi, ajala katende yanti, ndipo anthu ophunzira wandu wotuma so kwambiri. ndiye ngati simuphunzira, skulu akuyikirani apa mukhala otumidwa.